The Anbernic RG40XXV has a problem, and the problem is that this is one of the prettiest devices that Anbernic has ever made, but nobody really cares because they feel like it is just the same console with a different shell, and they're not wrong. The problem is that this is the 7th version of the same console with the same specs and the same performance that we've had since December of last year, starting with the 35XX Plus, which was honestly a next-gen upgrade over the original 35XX. People were excited about this because we loved the original 35XX, especially with Garlic OS. And if we could have this, but with Wi-Fi and better performance that plays even more systems, well, it sounded too good to be true. And it wasn't. This came out to much fanfare. People really genuinely loved it. The only thing was, Ambernic stock firmware just left a lot to be desired, and while they have been updating it and making it better and better pretty much on a monthly basis since last December, I think the whole community is just kind of waiting and holding their breath that someone will make a custom firmware that really makes these things shine. Now, time went on, and a couple months later we got the H variant of this system, and there was still an excitement in the air about the H700 and what it could do, and now we had a couple of joysticks to take advantage of some of those higher end 3D games. And then eventually we got to this little guy right here, the 28XX, and I was personally very excited about the 28XX because it fits in your pocket so easily. It's so readily available and portable, and you can literally take it anywhere. But with each release in 2024, it just seemed like there was less and less to say about these devices, and that brings me to the RG40XXV. And what's unfortunate is that I do think this is Ambernic's best offering yet. And I mean, can you imagine if we had gone from the original 35XX straight to this? People would have gone nuts. This is such a cool device, and I really only have 1.5 complaints about it, and so we're going to get into that now, all the stuff that I love and the couple of things that aren't so great. And as we dive in, if you're new to the channel, I hope you'll consider sticking around by clicking like and subscribe. So here it is up close, and it really is quite stunning, I think, when you're seeing it. You have different options for the thumbstick with the RGB lighting. You can change the colors and customize that to your liking, which is pretty cool. But everything else here is more or less like it is on the other devices. We have a menu button in the middle, start and select here in the middle as well. On the left side of the device, we have our TF1 card slot as well as our volume rocker, and on the right side of the device is our TF2 slot, our reset button, and our power button. On top we have an HDMI out and our power light indicators, and then on bottom is a 3.5mm headphone jack as well as our charging port. Now this does have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in, so yes, it does support external controllers, and yes, you can hook this up to a TV, use an external controller, and kind of use it as a console, which is really cool. But we've seen all of that before, and that's what's so frustrating, is that they gave us all of these different form factors, these different options, but they saved the best for last, and I kind of wish they had just announced all of them at the same time so that we could pick the ones that we really wanted the most. Instead, they've made it seem like you've missed out on this tiny little feature or this tiny little improvement here or there if you don't continue to buy every single one of these different models. And that makes it really hard to be excited about this device and to recommend it, even though I do think it's my favorite of all the devices that they've released in this XX line. Of course, you have save and load states like always. You just hold menu and hit the R1 button, or hit menu and hold the L1 button. And that's great and all. And oh man, glad I have L1. Oh yeah, and slow motion, if you need that for some reason, is L2. Menu and L2. Dang it. Let me try that again. It's just, no. Come on. Easy does it. Easy just one more time, and man, here we go, going for it, and no. I just keep walking into the same problem. Why? Sometimes that happens in life. Yeah, I know, I'm so frustrated, but what can you do? Well, you could try out today's video sponsor, BetterHelp. A few years ago, my wife and I were not in a healthy place. We kept walking into the same pitfalls in our marriage, and our relationship was more like roommates than spouses. We weren't ready to call it quits, but we also knew our marriage wasn't what it should be. So I swallowed my pride and I said, babe, I think we should try therapy. And that was really scary for me. I didn't know what to expect or what the therapist would say or what my wife might say or what would come to the surface through all of this. But what I found is that it helped us understand one another. It brought peace to our home and fondness to our marriage and tools for coping with frustration. That's amazing. Yeah, and BetterHelp is on a mission to make therapy easier so that can happen for anyone. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire and you will be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure their therapists are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can count on. If you're struggling and you think you'd benefit from a therapy session, click the link in the description. Thanks for telling me that. That helps a lot. And check this out, what you got. Boom! Hey, great job, and now you're better prepared for the next one. You're right, getting help really does pay off down the road. Go to betterhelp.com/bonosgaming and get 10% off your first month of therapy. Now, one thing that was immediately noticeable for me is that literally just last month we got the 40XXH, and that device came with Nintendo games. It had preloaded Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo, but the 40XXV did not have a single preloaded game on any Nintendo console. And I don't mean just Nintendo published games, Nintendo first party games, I mean any game that ever released on a Nintendo console. However, I still have a lot of my Nintendo games, and so I loaded some of my own onto here, and that's what I'm playing now. And one of my favorites, of course, is Super Mario Bros. 3. And let's just go ahead and take a listen to the speakers right now while we're here. We do just get the mono speaker, but it's fine. It works just as it should, and I have no issues with it whatsoever. Now let's talk about these buttons for a moment. I do find that to my liking, the face buttons have the perfect height and resistance to them. I think that they feel absolutely fantastic and wonderful, precise. And the D-pad, I keep seeing people say that the D-pad is perfect, and honestly, I have to agree. I've seen a couple of people who haven't liked the D-pad so much, and that baffles me. I can't imagine not loving this thing. But for me, the D-pad is absolutely fantastic. It's just the right size, it doesn't wobble, so it's cut right for the hole, and the resistance, I think, is just absolutely perfect. So the buttons feel fantastic. Honestly, everything that's on here feels exactly like it should. Everything is easy to reach. I find platforming to be generally easy, and when I need to crouch, I don't have a problem with that. Now, if you do roll, you'll find some pretty easy diagonals, but I'm okay with that because I can tell right where the center is. And for games where I need to roll, like fighting games, then this is absolutely perfect because I want those diagonals to be fairly easy to hit. Menu and start exits a game. Now, something I really do want to talk about is the improved performance. It's the same chipset, same RAM, 1 gig of RAM, H700, all that's the same. But they do keep making improvements to the firmware, which I mentioned earlier. And one of the games that I noticed that I really saw that in, well, two actually, once I loaded Cruisin' USA and GoldenEye 007. And I'm going to use GoldenEye 007 as my example here because it really illustrates the improvements, but also one of the drawbacks of this handheld. And here we are. And if you look, you're going to notice that the sky is kind of messed up in this emulator, but the game itself runs like it should. And I'm going to leave the frame rate up here so you can see that there are going to be some dips, but earlier this year, when this game first came out, playing GoldenEye was impossible. You had way too many frame dips. I mean, it would just be cut in half or worse most of the time. And here, honestly, we don't have a perfect 60 frames per second, but this is a playable experience, except for one drawback, and the drawback is the joystick itself. It's incredibly hard to aim in this game, and it's because of this joystick. The joystick snaps to cardinal directions, and so when you're trying to move left to right, it moves way too much, especially in the heat of the moment. So for example, just trying to run straight to get to this box, I mean, I can't make the thing turn and get precisely on my target, and sometimes you just find yourself careening way too far to the left or the right. And this is a problem, honestly, just coming up here in a second, right here on this lock, where I need to aim at this lock right here. If I just barely touch the joystick, it goes way over here or way over there. And getting it right on the lock, the first time I did it, took me about 30 seconds just to hit that lock on the gate here, which is way too long and was kind of frustrating. And you'll see here, like, I can't run in a straight line. Like, I finally get it, but most of the time it's just like out of control and I'm barely moving the joystick at all. And what makes that even more frustrating is that they just came out. Literally, pre-sales are going up this week of the recording of this for the RG40XXV. And the people who have gotten, there's a guy. The people who have gotten the 406V already and have been able to play it already, they have said they finally fixed the cardinal snapping of the joysticks. So they just released back-to-back 2 vertical handhelds, both with joysticks. And what's really weird is they have this incredible display on here with these super narrow bezels that just looks absolutely gorgeous. And they could have implemented that into the 406V, which they did not do, which really baffles me because it makes it look like an older device when actually it's a much more powerful device. But then they fixed the joystick issue in the 406V, but didn't share that with the 40XXV. These numbers and letters are all getting confused in my head, but I think I made my point here. Why didn't they share the narrow bezels with the 406V and share the joysticks with the 40XXV? Because then, man, this would have been such an easy recommendation. This device, I would be recommending it to everybody as your budget handheld of 2024, because I love this clean, fresh look. I love this screen. I love how they've continued to improve the performance. And just to give you like a reference point, even though Cruis'n USA isn't playing at a steady 60 frames per second, earlier this year this game would have played at like 15 or 20 frames per second. So they've really improved this quite a lot, again, except for that cardinal snapping, which makes it extremely hard to steer because I can never seem to just go straight. It always goes a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, so I'm constantly making adjustments. So there's just a lot of really great qualities in this little device, and it really is almost perfect. Now, the only other thing that I might complain about, and I'm only going to say this because I can compare it to all of these other devices, is that this does feel like the shell is just maybe a slightly thinner, more hollow plastic, as well as the buttons. The buttons to me feel like there's almost nothing behind them. And that's really odd because literally on every other XX device, the side buttons, the quality of them, they feel substantial, like they feel very strong. And the side buttons here feel like they went with a different manufacturer or something. There's something different about them that makes them feel a little more budgety. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. Like, they just don't feel quite the same. But I'm not going to dwell on that because those buttons don't get used very often. I also want to say that I find the triggers on the back to be very comfortable. They are very easy to press. Some people might find that slightly annoying or frustrating because they're so easy to push down. Maybe you might hit them accidentally, but that really hasn't been an issue for me. Something else I'd say is that, in my opinion, this is a coffee table device. This is a device that you leave sitting on your end table, your coffee table, your nightstand for some pick up and play fun. This is not a pocketable device, again, in my opinion, depending on the size of your pockets. But this joystick is rubberized, and I do find that anytime I try to fit it into my pocket, it gets stuck on the fabric and it just doesn't go very well. It's just too big. I mean, look at it compared to this. This is a pocketable device. This really isn't, and that's okay. Not every device needs to be more pocketable. This one is extremely comfortable in my hand because of its size. It just is a lot more comfortable to hold for longer periods of time, and I do really appreciate that about it. In the end, I think what you're going to find is that if you decide to pick up the 40XX V, you're not going to be disappointed or feel like you were left out. And if you're on a budget and you're looking for a vertical handheld, I think this is the one to beat. And it's hard for me to imagine them doing much else with the H700. Now, wait 3 weeks and they might prove me wrong, but I just don't know what other form factor they would put that chipset in that would make sense. And because to me they did save the best for last, it's hard for me to imagine them announcing any more budget handhelds this year until they're ready for their next gen. But again, 3 weeks from now, that statement might have aged like sour milk. Now, I do have affiliate links in the description below if you want to pick up one of these for yourself. And I do so appreciate you all watching, liking, subscribing, sharing this video with a friend. It means a lot to me. Also, don't forget to check out betterhelp.com/bonosgaming. And until next time, stay kind and encouraging out there, and I'll catch you on the flippity flip.